Good morning. It is, what is today, October the 2nd, 2018. This is the agenda setting for the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners. And this is Commissioner Gary Edwards. I'm Commissioner John Hutchings. We have packets here. I don't know if they're available for everybody, but this is what we're going to be going through is this morning's agenda. And now I officially, in about 45 or 47 seconds, pass the baton over to the Board of County Commissioner Chair, Bud Blake. So we've just did introductions, the three of us, and that's it. So go ahead.
Okay, so we'll start with the.
Oh, can't hear you.
Meeting for October 2nd, the agenda. I'm on the work session agenda, and so I'll start with that first. So,
can you turn that microphone on?
We already hollered.
I don't know how to say mute. Okay, there we go. We'll ask Commissioner Edwards to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll move to approve today's agenda if there's no revisions, and then the board meeting minutes for September 25th, 2018. We have one presentation today, and that's for Emergency Services. That's Kirk Harding for the Director of Emergency Services. The proclamation for Washington State Preparedness Month and Thurston County Flood Awareness Week, and I think we have that prepared.
Yeah, you reviewed this last week, Commissioners, and I believe you had the opportunity to look at this resolution, and I believe you already signed that. Kurt Harding is going to be presenting information related to the state. Also has been proclaimed the month of October as the Flood Awareness Week month. So, is there anybody who might be coming this afternoon in addition to?
Yeah, we're going to, Josh Cummins might be here. We're going to be incorporating CPAD into this as well because CPAD and emergency management team up and partner this very closely. CPAD's got a number of areas of this as well.
Okay. All right.
But of course, that depends on the health of the CPAD.
Jesus. All righty. So, any questions about the proclamation?
No.
No. Okay, sure. Moving on to item number 1, which is the opportunity for the public to address the board. Is there any issues or?
Yeah, you may. We continue to receive comments from the public related to the Department of Justice grant, and so you may hear some public testimony this afternoon related to that. I do have this item on later this morning on your agenda, and I will provide some feedback and perhaps provide recommendations at that time.
Any questions or comments?
No.
No. So we'll move on to the county manager's item, which is item number 2. And is there any county manager's update?
Yeah, depending on your decision this morning on the Department of Justice grant, I will report this afternoon as to your decision as to how you'd like to move forward.
Anything else? No? Okay, sure.
There will be a discussion later on about that?
Yeah, and in your agenda, you have agenda item number 2.
Lovely,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's a coming. Consent items. Items number 3, which is items A through E. First one's with the Sheriff's Office. It's a resolution to create an interlocal drug enforcement fund, 1470.
This is related to an action that you took maybe a couple months ago, agreeing to have the Thurston County Sheriff's Office be the fiscal agent for the Thurston Narcotics Task Force. Previous to that, it was the City of Lacey who was the fiscal agent to this particular funding. So the items 3A and 3B is related to this particular action. Item 3A creates a new interlocal new fund called Interlocal Drug Enforcement Fund that will be 1470, is where all the revenues associated with this particular activities will be deposited in. In item 3B is requesting to create 2 petty cash accounts. One is the evidence petty cash account for $25,000, and the other petty cash account is the Thurston Narcotics Task Force for $150. That will be items 3A and 3B.
A and B together?
And that's pretty much a formality, because it changes every several years. Yeah,
Any comments, questions? Elaine?
No.
Anything for you?
no.
All right.
On the resolution to create the fund, we have a revised resolution that I'll get to Anita this morning.
Not a problem. So 3C is from the Community Planning and Economic Development. It's a resolution reclassifying a position, which is from Water Resources Specialist number 1 to Water Resource Specialist number 2.
Yeah, the Director of Community Development, Community Planning and Economic Development has gone through the process of reassessing the business needs of the entire department. And this is yet another action that he's requesting for you to support. And this is the reclassification from a Water Resource Specialist 1 to Water Resources Specialist 2. That's really aligning to what the stormwater utility really needs in terms of providing services to the citizens. This particular action consists of increasing the salary of this position from $5,908 to $6,513. That will be a $605 increase every month, or 10%. And this will be covered by the stormwater utility. No general funds associated with this action, and no budget amendments are required on this particular action.
Any comments or questions on that? Mm-hmm. All righty. Let's go to 3D, which is from Public Works. And this says revised. So it's to set a public hearing for the 6-year transportation improvement plan program.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Last week, you authorized to set the public hearing for the 6-year transportation improvement program, 2019 to 2024, for October 23rd. This particular action is to revise that for the public hearing to be set on October 30th, 2018, at 3 in the afternoon. And the intent of this particular request is to better align all the different public hearings they have before you. And I think this action has probably accomplished that.
And is that typically done in consent?
Because this is a revised on an action they already took, that's what is a consent.
But we didn't revise we revised the date and time?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you like, we can bring it as a departmental
It
item.
just seems typically we announce that, but it seems, I don't know, will the public know if we just do a consent?
That is whatever you like to do.
Would like to do. It's totally
That is entirely up to your purview.
Yeah.
We can bring it as a department item if you like.
It's your call.
I think we should let everybody know rather than just revise it and post it.
Yeah, put in the department items.
Yep. No
Did you
problem.
have a question?
That's okay.
Yeah, you won't hurt a thing.
Thank you.
Is that all right, Jennifer?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you're more than welcome to say differently. Item E is the auditor from the financial services, and that's posted on the web. So I'll just move into department items. Department item number 4, which is public health and social services, and the description is approval of the Healthcare Authority Division Behavioral Health Program County Agreement 1863-34846. And Carrie's here.
Yeah, you also reviewed this agenda item last week, and the intent is the State of Washington, the Healthcare Authority Division of Behavioral Health Criminal Justice Treatment Account, also known as CJTA. And Drug Card Services is an agreement to provide substance use disorder treatment and recovery support services to those individuals in the criminal justice system. This agreement has a total cost of $239,327, and the duration of the agreement in this proposal is from July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019. And Carrie Hennon is here to answer any questions you may have on this particular matter.
Any comments or questions on this action?
No.
Nope, that's good. So we'll move on to 4B, which is approval of interlocal agreement amendment number 2 to the Washington State Department of Children, Youth, and Families contract 1053-02. And I think this is a restated one, but just
Yes, you also
clarify.
reviewed this. This is somewhat of a revision to the action that you took maybe 3 weeks ago. And the revision before you is to extend the current contract to July 31st, 2018, as opposed to the action that it was July 31st, 2018. And also by increasing the duration of the contract to July 31st, 2018, the agreement and the dollar amount on the agreement also increases by $624,183.55. And this is related to provide funding for additional additional duration for the ongoing services to Mason and Thurston counties related to the Nurse Family Partnership Services. Right now, the program serves 35 families in Mason County and 52 families in Thurston County. And I believe Shelley is available to answer any questions you may have.
I'm just curious, it's pass-through money?
Yeah, it's actually an allocation from the state.
Yes.
It's just an enhanced amount, okay.
No questions.
All right, very good. 4B is good, so we're going to move on to 5, Section 5, which is Community Planning and Economic Development. And so we're going to ask to set a public hearing, and it's going to be the renewal of the interim marijuana regulations, ordinance number 14944, as amended. And Allison or someone from there will be able to talk to it.
Yeah, this is a request for you to set the public hearing for October 30, 2018, 5:30 in the afternoon in this room. Is for you to consider public testimony to extend the existing interim marijuana regulation for another 6 months. And also that will give you the opportunity to work with staff in the upcoming months to see whether you want to change the existing interim marijuana regulations to make it a permanent, or just take the interim regulation, make it a permanent, or none of the above. And those are the options the board has. And again, this is to give you the opportunity for another 6 months to explore what options you have in front of you.
Will there be another briefing between now and then?
No.
No, not between now and the hearing, but between now and the decision making.
Well, what it will be is I will have you the options of either to close the public hearing or extend the interim, or maybe just close the public hearing and ask the staff to come back a
There
later
you go.
date
Okay, that's what I'm
and
looking for.
have that conversation again.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any comments on that? So I'm going to move to item number 6, which is with the public defense. And it's the interlocal agreement amendment for the City of Tumwater Indigent Defense Legal Services. And
Yes, you reviewed this item last week, and this is an amendment for an agreement from 2013 with the City of Tumwater, where the City of Tumwater compensates the Office of Public Defense and the county for indigent defense associated with the charges of crimes in a way committed within the City of Tumwater. This agreement has a total cost of $608,700, and the $260,000 are in 2019 and $267,000 in 2020. There is also $30,000 in each year to compensate for any conflict counsel that may be associated with the indigent defense. And that's when there's 2 defendants on the same case. They require different attorneys. This amendment is requested to go from January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2020. I'd like to amend the action that is before you to authorize the Director of Office of Public Defense to execute the amendment. And we will add that language on the action for this afternoon.
Is that an increase in cost over the previous agreement?
No, I think it's just about the same.
It's about the same, okay.
It may be some increases because the caseload.
I was asked about
Has
caseload for
increases,
next,
yeah.
yeah, thank you.
And Patrick is here to answer any questions you may have.
so I have a question similar to this, maybe Patrick, maybe to answer or not, but does Tumwater in any other jurisdiction help in the bigger piece of the indigent issues at the state to be able to help advocate for the state to fully fund indigent defense?
Good morning, Commissioners.
That might put you in a position, I'm not sure that, I'm just
Yeah, I
wondering
don't
what the
know if I
bigger
can
picture is of
speak
that.
necessarily to municipalities and what the municipalities of the state of Washington's position is. I would like to think it's probably similar to the counties, but I do think it's commendable for the city of Tumwater to contract with Thurston County Public Defense to ensure that the citizens of their municipality are getting adequate representation under the state standards. They're eligible for the existing grant opportunities provided by the state, but up to 4%.
Okay.
Whether you need it or not. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just silly.
All righty, we'll see. Thank you so much, Patrick. So item number 7 is with Superior Court, and so it's the court treatment, drug court treatment services contract amendment, and Sabrina's here just in case, but you want to give some background.
Yeah, items 3A and 3B are related. The first item for your consideration is to extend the existing agreement from December 1st, 2017 to November 30th, 2018, and as a result is the extension on the amount of $631,321. Through this action, it will give Superior Court the opportunity to go with an RFP to secure the services for this particular contract, and that is the item 7B. The $731,321 is a combination of state grants as well as from the Behavioral Health Organization, and there is not any general fund monies associated with this item. And also, this particular amount is already included in the current allocation in Superior Court for 2018. So no budget amendment is requested, is required. And Superior Court is here to answer any questions.
You have a question?
Well, my question is, we're just extending it to the end of next month, and then it'll come back.
No, and if you see item 3B,
Yeah.
it's requesting for you to authorize going with that request for proposals. And with the hope, the request for proposals will result in a new contract with a new vendor on a different procurement process. So the extension to November 30, 2018 just gives a little more time to go through the RFP
Okay.
process.
All right, thank you.
Any comments?
No, I got it.
We're good with that, sure. So 8 is county commissioners and county managers items, and we'll take care of that when we come to that portion of the agenda at the 2 o'clock session. So that just brings me to, are there any questions from anybody around the table or directors for 2 October concerning the agenda for today? Seeing none, I'll move on to item on the work session agenda, the big agenda, if you will, for today. There's October 9th, we'll do the BOCC, and then we'll do the BOH. And so first item is for the BOCC is the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Hutchings, move to approve the agenda, and the board meeting minutes for October 2nd. We have several presentations on October 9th. The first and foremost is the proclamation for Civility and Conflict Resolution Month. And do you want to address that?
Yeah, we have been coordinating with the executive director of the Dispute Resolution Center. It will be Ms. Jody Serber, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And we have been working on the proclamation. I believe the proclamation, draft proclamation is before you. You have a week to provide some comments. Ms. Serber has provided the language. And she will be here next week to talk about this particular proclamation.
Okay. Any comments, question on that?
No.
No.
We definitely want civility and conflict resolution. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So the other proclamation is with the Public Health and Social Services is Walk to School Month, and I see that one in here also, and I think Chris normally does that. Is Chris gonna be doing
And
it? Sure.
that's your yearly proclamation of, to proclaim the Walks to School Month in Thurston County, and also is to encourage to walk to school day on Wednesday, October 10th, 2018. And Chris Hawkins is here to give you some perspective about this. I do have a question and perhaps a suggestion for the commissioners. Considering the walk to school day is Wednesday, October 10th, 2018, which is Wednesday of next week, and you will be proclaiming this on Tuesday, October 9th. Just wondering if we can bring this proclamation today and send that information today, and the public has the opportunity to plan the walk to school day on October 10th.
What say you, Chris?
I'm okay with that. That's great.
How about you? Yeah, good.
Well, I think it's a good idea. Very good idea.
Sure. We'll get the walking.
Yep.
So that will mean if you have any revisions to the
Okay.
resolution, to the
We got to
proclamation.
do it quickly, huh?
On it.
Well, so we'll bring this item for today's agenda.
How many schools, can I give us a background real quick on how many
Sure.
schools and what it consists? Has it grown since the last two, three times you briefed it?
It is an event that happens throughout Thurston County. So we've been working with a couple of schools in North Thurston School District. I think Commissioner Blake, you're particularly familiar with Olympic View, having participated in that event in the past. We'll be trying to support that as well as some new sites in the South County, Tenino and Rainier. School districts are both engaged with us in the Safe and Active Routes to School effort. This is obviously to encourage kids and families to be active on their way to and from school, active and safe, I should say. So it's in part a physical activity opportunity and promotion that we're doing with this. It's also injury prevention because we're trying to teach about safe walking and traffic safety skills for kids and families. And so yes, it's growing around the county, and we're working with more school districts this year on it.
Good.
If you've never done it, it's a neat way to meet community members, be it grandparents, moms, dads, and the kids will let you know what's going on and as far as school, and it's kind of a fun thing. So,
Correct, yep.
all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you much, Chris.
It just
See
seems
you this afternoon.
No,
The
later
obvious-
on today.
Yeah.
Labanita,
Yes.
the change of the date at the very bottom
Okay.
needs to be changed. The rest of it seems to be okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chris.
You're welcome.
So, now back on 9 October, so we're going to strike that from 9 October and move it to today for the proclamation. And Chris is prepared to do that. But that does leave us with a proclamation for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And is Mary Hall?
Mary Hall has requested for you to consider a proclamation to declare October as the Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Okay.
And she will be providing the language for the proclamation. We will make that available to you prior
Not in
to
there.
next Tuesday.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
We'll have to adapt and overcome on that one. Let's see here. So we do still have another proclamation from the Prosecuting Attorney's Office, the proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I think Christy Peters is going to be here.
Yes, as you may recall, last week you as a Board of Health determined that perhaps this proclamation should be better suited under the Board of Health. So you will see in your agenda, Board of Health, that similar proclamation is for your consideration.
Sure.
So the Prosecuting Attorney's Office has submitted this item. So I think we have a couple of options in here. I can probably contact the Prosecuting Attorney's Office and encourage them to attend the Board of Health meeting where you will be proclaiming Domestic Awareness Month, or you may consider having two proclamations, one under the Board of County Commissioners, the other one under the Board of Health.
Yeah.
Those are the options that you have.
Yeah, I spoke to Mr. Dunheim. He said both are not a problem. So I mean, it's not going to be a long, drawn-out thing on the BOCC portion. Probably a little bit more on the BOH, but
So we'll do the breast cancer awareness and DV at the VOCC and BOH?
No, the Board of Health is only the domestic violence
oh,
awareness.
just domestic violence.
Oh, so we'll
Just
remove that from
domestic
BOH, the other ones. I see them both on BOH.
No, and I guess that's the question that I have. Do you like to have them on both?
Both for BOH.
Okay.
Board of County Commissioners or Board of Health, or just Board of Health?
Do you have a
I think it's more than just a Board of Health issue. I think we ought to have it on
both? Yeah.
I think most people watch this, the BOCC, rather than just the Board of Health. Special interest groups that watch.
Right.
So I
That's
think it should be
why.
on both.
That's why Mr. Dunheim didn't have a problem with both.
Okay.
He recognized
Okay,
the
so
same thing.
we'll keep on both. We'll keep this agenda item, and also you will review the agenda that include these items as well for the Board of Health.
Rather people hear it twice and not at all, or just once?
There you go. So that concludes the proclamation portion of the agenda for 9 October. So is it too early to know for the opportunity? Sure, yeah, opportunity for the public to address the board. How about county manager's update?
So if you receive any public testimony this afternoon, I will follow up next week and respond to some of the public testimony.
Okay, so consent items, we only have A, or alpha. So there's not a B. So alpha A is the auditor's financial services. Is there, so yeah, it has to go on there, no matter what. So, okay.
Is your weekly
It's a
approval.
technicality, but yeah. So for section 4, or item 4 is the sheriff's office. And so it's a contract for a part-time school resource officer in the Rainier School District.
Yeah, traditionally, you have entertained those items under the consent agenda. My suggestion for the sheriff's office was to come and just have a conversation as to the services the sheriff's office provides to the different school districts. And I know the amount may not be significant enough, but I believe the services are essential to the school districts as to what the sheriff's office provides. The first item, 4A, is for $40,000. That's a part-time sheriff's deputy. They provide school resources to the Rainier School District. Item 4B is for $60,000 and provide resource officer duties to the Rochester School District.
So
And that's for the years the school year 2018-2019, both.
Any comments?
Nope, good deal.
Well, in our regular meeting with the superintendents last week, they were speaking exceedingly highly of that program. So
Absolutely.
I absolutely support it. My question is in the motion, move to approve and sign. We're not signing that. The sheriff signs it, yeah? That'd be for A and B?
Yeah, we'll change that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cool.
They'll delegate to the sheriff.
Yeah, well, a delegation of authority to the sheriff to
Yeah.
sign it.
Thank you.
The board signs all interlocal.
The government, yeah.
Okay, does not, you got it.
But one way or another, it's got to be specified.
Yep.
Sure. Clear it up. Okay, so that knocks out or takes care of 4A and B. So I'll move to item number 5, which is from Public Works. And Public Works is requesting approval of amendment number 2 to the waste export and disposal agreement between Thurston County and Regional Disposal Company.
This is a follow-up to the briefing the commissioners had on last week related to the many different procurement process and the agreements that we have in place at the Waste and Recovery Center. And this particular action is to exercise the extension of this agreement of the waste export and disposal agreement to April 30, 2020. And that's just to align with the other agreement. And again, this is just to exercise the current terms of the agreement. In a later date, I will come back to the board and have a conversation as to where you like to go in terms of the procurement options that you have in front of you in order to gear ourselves to renew that agreement after April 30, 2020.
Any comments or questions?
Good.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. Item number 6 is commissioners and county managers items, and where we be able to speak to the public about what we've seen in the general public. We also have the Board of Health that day, and we'll go over that agenda in just a second. We also, later that day, on the 9th of October, we have a public hearing at 5:30, and Public Works is to consider amendments to Thurston County Code Section 1512 concerning sewer and water rates charges for Grand Mound, Boston Harbor, Tamman Shad, Beverly Beach, and Olympic View.
Yeah, you will have the opportunity to hear public testimony as required by law before you can take any particular action in increasing fees. And this is related to a specific utility ratepayers. And the intent of the proposed rate increases is just to keep up with the demands of managing those different utilities and provide the right level of services to the customers. And the action before you will be just to close the public hearing. And then the decision whether you like to increase the fees or not will be part of the overall budget approval later in the year.
Yeah, sure.
We'll be taking testimony from citizens at that point as well.
Absolutely.
right, Prior to closing.
Absolutely.
Oh, my
That is
God,
the
Yeah,
intent.
yeah, okay.
Any comments, questions?
No, no.
All righty, so that's pretty much the agenda for 9 October. Any other department items that might come on between now and then? Just
Perhaps, but I'm not aware of anything that might be coming.
It's kind of a shortened, but
Yeah,
it might be
it's-
good because 9 October is kind of packed with some other things in there. So. Okay, so that completes 9 October for today to be for the review. So I'm going to move into the Board of Health also for 9 October. And we have the Board of Health at 3:30, and I'll call the meeting to order and move to approve the agenda if there's no revisions. And 9 October, we have a couple presentations because it's a very busy month. And so the first presentation is, presentation and proclamation is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And we have Shelley and Lydia here to talk to us a little bit about it. But anybody can chime in as far as the Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Do you have any comments or feedback on it?
Yes. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Shelley Slaughter, Director of Thurston County Public Health and Social Services. And October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we will have a couple people attending. Liz Davis will be presenting this proclamation because it falls within her division and is near and dear to her heart personally. Nicole Wolseley, who you heard from last year from the American Cancer Society, will also be here to talk about breast cancer and how we can prevent it.
What color were we supposed to wear that day?
Pink and purple.
Okay.
Because Domestic Violence Awareness Month is purple.
That's right.
Another pink shirt.
Sure. So is it just Corinne, or you said a couple people will be coming in addition to? Do you know by chance?
I know that Nicole will be attending, and last year I believe she had a couple other people from her organization that attended, and I'm not sure exactly if there's any other organizations attending, but I know that there's several people that are interested in this topic. But Nicole will be doing a short presentation.
Okay, sure.
Isn't the sheriff's office doing something? I see some pink patches around.
Yes, the Sheriff's Office is participating in the Pink Patch. I can't remember the name of the exact program, but yes, they have been participating in that, and that's been great.
And they're looking at having a sheriff's department vehicle painted pink. They're getting that priced out.
They may consider purple also.
Okay,
I'll go with the purple. That's not a problem.
make a combination.
I'm happy to extend the invite to a member of the Sheriff's Office if you're interested in hearing more about that program.
That'd be great.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we have another presentation, the presentation proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I see Liz on there, but are there any other possible
Yes.
participants?
There will be personnel from both Safe Place and Family Support Center of South Sound who will be coming to accept the proclamation and share a little bit about their program and their work. I believe they will also be attending the BOCC earlier.
Do we have people attending that will be giving testimonials about personal experiences?
I believe there's one survivor that would like to share her story.
Okay.
There's one.
I don't have any further details on that right now.
And I know one is coming for the American Cancer Society also to talk about surviving. Two of them, actually. All righty. Any comments or questions overall on the presentations from anybody?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, let's go into, is there, item number 3 is the opportunity for the public to address the board. Do you know of any issues?
I'm not aware of any.
Comments? Okay, we'll move on to item number 4, which is the department items, and we have the Thurston Thrives Action Team update. The Housing Action Team, Incentivized Housing, Liz and Crosby and Zach.
Yes.
I like this. Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, Zach Kostouris will be here to do a short presentation on the incentivized housing team of the Housing Action Team and talk about the housing affordability model. You've heard some versions of this presentation at some other meetings that I know that you've attended, but we wanted an opportunity for the public to hear about the great
good.
work that the incentivized housing team has been doing. And Zach has submitted updated slides from what are in your packet today. So we'll be uploading those so that you have those for next week.
Any comments on the ham?
No.
Good. I will have questions for them. Item 5 is set a public hearing on ordinance to amend the Environmental Health Division fee schedule. And you are Art, who's presenting that?
Yes, Art will be presenting this item. He's here if you have any specific questions, but we covered this in a briefing with you a couple of weeks ago. We are proposing an amendment, an amendment of our fee schedule of up to 10% for all of our environmental health programs to sufficiently cover our current costs and to meet the increased demand that we have in those programs. This needs to come for the Board of Health, so we're requesting to set the public hearing for November 27th at this Board of Health so that we can schedule the special meeting for November 27th and include it with the rest of the budget hearings.
Do you remember the brief? You're good with it? Mm-hmm. He has a slideshow in here, and will he be presenting a slideshow on the day of?
Yes, well, for the
Public hearing.
for setting the public hearing, yes, I believe so.
All righty, then move on to the director's report. You'll be able to do that. And then Dr. Wood, health officer's report. And it sounds like a little bit with all that involved, with the proclamations and what have you, it'll take pretty much a long time to do it. So any other comments or
Yes.
questions?
No, sir.
How about you, Romero? Anybody? Anything from you? No. That's the Board of Health on October 9th. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So it's 9:47. Normally I wait till 10 o'clock, but I think I'm going to go ahead and take a break because it's an opportunity to get refresh ourselves and come back at 10 o'clock.
You want to look at the change for the public defense?
2nd of October today and the 9th of October for next week, and the Board of Health, BOH, for 9 October. Let's move into, well, we did proclamations and awards already. Do we need to address any other proclamations and awards?
No, I think you already reviewed those, Commissioners.
Okay, so we'll move into the next item, which is briefings, public hearing decisions pending. And the item we have here is the Climate Action Plan Phase 2 briefing that we received on September 19th. And I think we have an item here as far as, just reviewing the document here is, I know we adopted the targets and we were phase 1, and so we're looking at going into phase 2.
Yeah, this is phase 2.
Can you just recap what
Yep.
phase 2 is, the next step of that?
Yeah, under phase 1, you participated with all the different jurisdictions with the TRPC leading the chart. And as a result, also you implemented setting some targets as to how the pollution can be reduced in the upcoming years. So the next step in the process is to participate, for your consideration, to participate on phase 2 of the Climate Action Plan. The intent of this phase 2 is to come up with a series of strategies across the region as to what steps that we need to take to reduce pollution. So you receive maybe 2-3 briefings from staff, and as a result of those briefings, you have some questions. And one of the questions that you may have is, what are the obligations the county has? And perhaps what are the rules of engagement as we move forward into this particular matter. I did have the opportunity to have a conversation with Mark Daly yesterday, and through the conversation, I expressed to him as to how we can probably implement some language in the agreement that addresses your concerns in terms of what are the expectations and how those strategies will bring perhaps value to Thurston County, not as a region, but as an organization. So let me read the proposed language, and I believe this language is an attempt to address your concerns. And it reads, the plan will include a spectrum of strategies and actions that could be implemented at multiple geographic and demographic scales. Each jurisdiction will decide what strategies and actions to include in this individual implementation plan, considering jurisdictional context, priorities, and budget. And within that context, what it states is if you decide to get into this partnership on phase 2, it's not binding the county to any particular strategies in terms of the timing or budget. It will be up to the county as to how perceives to implement those strategies as a result of phase 2. And again, I believe this particular addition to the agreement addresses what I perceive your concerns were. And Chris is here and as well as Michael from TRPC and Shelley to answer any questions you may have.
Do you need a recap of what phase 2 might consist of?
Yeah, but I'm more concerned about where the money's coming from.
Yeah, that's a
Where's the money?
conversation that's happened.
Who's got the
How
money?
much and from where?
So how much?
If I may, so the proposed language on the agreement, again, I believe that addresses your concerns, and I'd recommend to add this language to that agreement. Now the difficult conversation is where the money is going to come from. And where the money is going to come from, I don't have an answer for you today. But if you like, if you like for staff to come back and explore some funding options, give us some time to do so. If you're okay with the language that I just read to you, that will give us the next step to come up with
So let's take
options of the
it
funding.
piece by piece. I know the money is an issue, but are you okay with the language what he read first? Let's go with that, and at least know that
Well, I
we're
am
after.
if we figure out the money.
Well,
Two-step process,
it's
Commissioner.
two-step process, yes.
Is the
exactly.
language you just read, though, right on par with the option number 1 pro that's in the briefing document?
I don't understand what you're
Let
asking.
me, what are you reading, Commissioners?
The one dated September 19th, both September 19th. What did you read from?
I'm reading a language that I worked with Mark Daly.
So
Okay,
it's not in
it's
print
not
here
It's
yet?
not in here. I just got this email.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
that's
okay.
why we didn't see it.
Would you do me a favor, read it one more time, pretty please, for me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And I'll pay attention
So
to this. I'm looking for it in here.
the addition states the plan will include a spectrum of strategies and actions that could be implemented at multiple geographic and demographic scales. Each jurisdiction will decide what strategies and actions to include in its individual implementation plan, considering jurisdictional context, priorities, and budgets. So with that language, it gives the county the latitude as to when, how, and how much money you would like to put in the future to implement those strategies. So there is no binding at this point.
So-
And it gives the same latitude, I'm sorry.
No, you're
It
right,
gives
go
It gives the cities
Absolutely.
latitude as well then, for their own specific jurisdictional
Yeah.
needs and such, okay?
Yes.
So I think we got the right language
I like that language.
so far, unless you have some,
No, that language is fine so
but we can't go
far.
forward with the language until we get the money. I got that.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
So do we have, I mean, and initially, we're talking about $43,750, right?
Right.
And then we don't know what might come after that. So you're saying that possibly if we can only come up with 14,000, that we can still move forward and participate? Or
No, I
42,000?
didn't say that. I did not say that. What I ask is if you're okay with this language to be introduced into the agreement, that is step number one. And if you like a thumbs up on that, on the language, it's okay. And then the next step for staff to come back to you and give you
Let's
some
do that.
potential options as to how we could fund phase two.
Are we going to talk about some possibilities of where that funding might come from?
That's what he's saying.
later
That's-
date.
But I mean, we're not going to talk about that now?
Because I don't have any options for you.
Has it
I
gone?
do.
Oh, well,
Stormwater. We're
Well-
talking about a potential flooding with, that's part of this whole climate issue.
So bring that to the money.
We will exercise all the potential options.
Because we
that
don't
you
have
may
any money in current expense.
No, I understand that. I understand. I'm not suggesting for
not
you
doing
to
that.
consider a general fund money. What I'm asking you is if you're okay with the language to give us the go-ahead on that, and also give us the go-ahead to come back with options as to how you could potentially entertain funding.
That's plan,
Phase
part
two.
B.
Okay.
You good with it? You sure?
I am.
No, we don't have the money yet. We gotta
No,
get
we
the
don't have the money, so,
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a contingency issue.
Gotta look through the seat covers of the couch and stuff and find them.
Well,
Find the pieces.
So maybe in a week, we'll come back to you next week
Good
with
with
some potential
Good with
funding
language?
options.
Oh, yeah.
All right, good with the language, yeah?
Okay.
Where's the money?
Deal. I'll answer that. We'll answer that question next
Oh,
week.
I'm not
Commissioner.
directing it at you, I'm just generally saying that.
Yep.
So, don't take that as a task either. Somehow or another, we'll find $43,000. What else? Okay, that's me, right? So we finished that. How about legislative update, PIO?
Yeah, I have a brief legislative update on that, Commissioners. That is not included on the agenda.
I'm going to skip through PIO and but then do commissioner items and then come back to PIO last. Is that all right? Okay. So legislative update.
Yeah, I had a follow-up meeting with the shared legislative group, which is includes all the different cities, the county, the Port of Olympia, South Puget Sound Community College, the chambers yesterday, and the group agree on what will be the items that will be included on their legislative agenda. So the items they so far are going to be moving forward is the I-5 project, additional funding, and that is for the study that goes from the Nisqually Bridge all the way south of Tumwater. There has already been allocated in the past legislative session, I believe, $500,000. So the request is to additional funding to finalize the EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement. The next item is the remodel of the Veterans Hub, where it's currently located. And the intent is that building is in dire need of not just repair, but totally reconstruction, and the ask is going to be about $1.8 million. As a result of this particular action, I believe the South Puget Sound Community College is agreeing to keep the Veterans Hub as a tenant for the foreseeable future, if in fact they're trying to use this as an argument. The next item on the agenda is the Regional Training Center for Law Enforcement, and that is an effort from the 3 cities, Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater. And I believe this particular training center will make available to other law enforcement agencies, including the Sheriff's Office, if they're in the need in the future. And last but not least is the court impact fees for Thurston County, the restatement of the court impact fees. And those are the 4 items that were decided at the group.
Do you hear all that legislative? Do you have any, you need to recap anything?
I'm curious about the training center.
That's right. I want to know more about the training center.
The training center, City of Olympia has a property on behind the Home Depot development of Phones Road. And they would like to have a training facility for law enforcement. And as I understood yesterday, it will be co-owned and co-operated by the 3 cities, Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater. When I asked if somebody else could access it, well, it will be available to other law enforcement agencies, including the Sheriff's Office, if the Sheriff's Office sees the needs of using that facility.
So right now it's just a conceptual idea?
The request is actually $5 million as part of the ask.
From who?
From the lead?
From the legislation. Yeah,
Currently, the fire department has a training center, a training area back there as well. They've had that for a long, long time.
I think the intent is to consolidate those functions.
I guess I'm curious as far as, okay, available to, at what cost, if any, and what about other entities that might want to participate? I mean, if we're going to get the legislature to fund something, what about Yelm and Tenino?
Yeah, my understanding is they will make it available to other law enforcement agencies.
At what cost?
At a cost, and I don't know what that cost will be.
So the taxpayers are going to pay for it, and then they're going to charge taxpayers to use it.
Almost
That is
like
a
the
request.
OPD range when it existed. There was contracts with several agencies
Well,
who wouldn't use it at a cost.
And initially, that was supposed to be a partnership at no cost, but they reneged on the deal.
Well, I realize that.
So I tell you what, I'm not crazy about it right off the bat, without some protections in there for the sheriff's office and the
Yeah.
other municipal agencies in the county.
I understand that, Commissioner, in the shared legislative agenda, the county only
Not our
has 1
issue,
vote.
though. It's not our issue, really.
It's not a.
Well, it's going to be an issue if I go up there and testify against it,
Well, yeah.
and I'd like to hear from the sheriff. The sheriff is present. I mean, if he's got a concern one way or
Do
the
you have
other.
a comment?
The sheriff has not.
Please.
Unfortunately, the sheriff's office has not been consulted on any law and justice center. The talks of a law and justice center have been, we've spoken about it for many years. However, it's always associated with a cost. The last incident that we were looking at with the city of Lacey would have cost us $100 and some per deputy to use.
Per use.
Per use. So it was not something that would have been forwarded to the sheriff's office. So.
Well, there might be 2 of us testifying against that.
Yeah, I mean, I see no good benefit. I mean, the state patrol already takes taxpayers' monies to run their academy and to run their training session, and then they charge jurisdictions to utilize that, which I don't see that's a proper expenditure of tax money.
I would guess it, I don't know what the definition of the law and justice center is.
It's a training facility,
If
yeah.
you're speaking of
Training
training
center.
facility, is it a facility that they do mock scenes, train their officers in Scholastic, or is it involve firearms? And if it does involve firearms, then there's a lot more things to deal with, and it will be, at this time, just in prior talks, would not be cost-friendly to the sheriff's office.
And or they're just so initial, the plan is so wrong. Is it indoor and outdoor? Is it mostly classroom? Because they had all those amenities at the range, and they took the range out to put in not recycling, but a
Unloading.
transfer station, whatever.
Yeah.
It's now moving to the same thing,
Transfer
but now it's involving the cities. Guess it's not, again, it's not a county issue at this point, but I just question what it would be, what's the intent, what's it gonna look like, and I don't know if they've even gotten to that point yet or not.
I don't think they have gotten to that point because the request is to start the design of this facility. So it was pretty apparent to me that they have not approached the sheriff's office, and I don't think it was intent to approach the sheriff's office to partner on this particular venture.
No wonder if
They're going to make, as I stated, they make it available to any other law enforcement agencies to use that facility. And
At
that is
a
the
cost.
You'd think,
At a
well, you'd
cost,
think
I
there would be
assume.
some type of agreement, even at this stage, between the three cities as to, I don't know if they're gonna pony up money each and at cost, or if each city pays to use the, and who owns it.
As far as I
Don't know.
understand, they haven't got to that level of detail, Commissioner.
Okay, that's interesting.
So this is what the group decided to include as a part of the legislative agenda, for the shared legislative agenda.
Okay, well, it's pretty obvious where we're at, I guess.
However, if they have built into it something that accommodates 50 law enforcement or 100 or whatever, so any agency could host some type of a regional training, that might be desirable. I just don't have enough information, but initially what I have, which is minuscule, I'm dubious.
Second.
Not that way. But thank you nonetheless.
No, I'm just reporting, so I'm not asking you to weigh in on this, which you did.
All right, that was the legislative update. And so I'm gonna,
Before we move off that, has there been any discussion about the Lacey annexation bill?
no.
No, there is, I believe there is a meetings coming up with Deborah Manguia at the end of this month. And I think the city of Lacey is planning to introduce the same legislation they introduced last year in terms of annexations.
So they already have, and apparently they have substantial backing. So we may want to talk about a strategy of our own.
I don't know what the bill consists of.
So if I may remind you, that piece of legislation, it was under the umbrella. They wanted to address all the different islands as a result of the annexation. But also in that piece of legislation, they requested to eliminate the boundary review board and as well as eliminate the 45-day public comment related to those proposed annexations. And as you may recall, my suggestion at that point is for the county to oppose that in terms of why eliminating the opportunity for the public to provide their perspective on any particular action related to an annexation by a city. And I believe that on the surface, it appeared to be a good legislation to address a little more systematic the islands included in their boundaries, but the underlying issue of eliminating the boundary review board and eliminating the 45-day comment period, it appeared to be overburdened. So I will work with Deborah, and she's tracking on this, and I will ask it if they knew or they is the same in terms of the boundary review board and the 45 days, and I will report back to you as to what that is. If it will continues to be those items, I will encourage the board to oppose that legislation again.
Deborah had suggested you may also want to engage Wasack, because this is more than a Thurston County issue.
Well, that's where I was going to go and ask the question. All righty. Okay, so commissioner items. We have 7 or 6 items actually, or 5, if you look at it in another way. But so which one is more important than the other? I see the sheriff here.
Yeah, number 1 is
Take
the
the one
sheriff's
with
is here
the
for number 1.
Okay, let's take the ATV one, and then we'll move to the, we'll just go down the list as they are numerically. So, all-terrain vehicle. Are you needing more ATVs?
Or pink ones?
So,
Hey, if I could get a pink one for this month, I think it'd be terrific,
Or purple
Purple.
possibly.
for domestic violence?
so if I may I frame the
Sure.
issue, Commissioner?
So it can be,
Back in 2013, the state legislature passed a law where each county can take individual actions to allow the circulation of all-terrain vehicles in county roads. For all those roads that are posted below the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. That has been in the books since 2013, and the sheriff is here to talk to you, for you perhaps to consider a resolution, or actually it's an ordinance, where you can allow that type of circulation of those vehicles in county roads. And again, for those roadways that are posted 35 miles an hour and below.
So, first off, I want to thank Romero for helping me put this together. This original ordinance came out of Snohomish County, which adopted this about a year or 2 ago. Adopted this ATV ordinance for county roads, 35 mile an hour or less. And so with the help of Deputy Prosecutor Rick Peters, we were able to incorporate what reflected Thurston County and the values that we have here in Thurston County about ATVs. And what I mean by the values is that we have an inordinate amount of, if you will, state property in the southwest part of our county. It is known as Capital Forest, where we do see a lot of ATV riding. The unfortunate part is during the spring and summer months, we are often confronted with ATVs and utilizing the public roadways to get to and from their destinations on Capital Forest land. And they are in violation of state law. So what this had been brought to my attention by several citizens wanting to see an ATV ordinance, and it was when I reviewed Snohomish County's ATV ordinance, where I found that it would best fit what meets the needs, or what better fits Thurston County. And this allows all-terrain vehicles that are properly licensed with licensed riders to be able to ride on the roadways in 35 mile an hour or less, and go to and from recreational activities. And also, I know that we do have an exemption for farm equipment, but we are seeing a lot of farmers in our community utilize ATVs quite a bit to and from on public roads that would definitely benefit them if they were licensed, that they could have multi-purpose for them. And so I felt that since this law was passed by legislation, that it definitely would meet the needs of our community.
Any comments about ATVs at 35 miles?
I'm curious, it says certain roads, why not all roads that are 35 or less?
Well, on the ordinance, because we have a lot of roads that are 35 mile an hour or less, the RCW states that if we cannot list all of them, that we also make it available where they're able to look it up online to see the roads that are available to ride on 35 mile an hour or less.
And we can't just say all roads 35 miles an hour or less?
Well, the ordinance does say it, but we want to make it very clear that those roads are also available to any citizen who wants to look up those roadways. And that was per the legislative piece on the ATVs. That we had to also, if we could not write down every road in the ordinance if it's allowed, that we have to make it available online.
Well, it says on the briefing here, Sheriff, decision needed, but there's no options here listed. And are you looking for it to purchase ATVs, or how many do you have?
This isn't not for the sheriff's office to purchase.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
This is for all citizens to be able to utilize ATVs.
Oh, okay. And it says also that the fines and forfeitures go right into the general fund. And legally, we can't designate where those fines and forfeitures go from the general fund, where they allocate them. We just decide that later.
That is
Okay.
under your purview.
Okay.
So if I may, I think from my perspective, the value added to this particular legislation before you, those vehicles are already using those county roads. I mean, the usage is already in place.
Yeah. Okay.
And the legislation, what it does is put a little more restrictions to make it, they need to be permitted, and they need to have certain specifications in order to be legally traveling in county roads. And that really is going to give, I believe, the tools for the sheriffs not to get too much into, if I may, policing of those illegal activities in a way. And as I believe also this particular legislation does not require any additional staffing levels for the sheriff's office.
That was my other question.
Yeah.
Staffing, so I'm okay now. Yeah.
I'm all for it, I just think we shouldn't have to be listing everything all the time. I'd just make it all roads.
I agree with that, Commissioner. It's just unfortunately that's what the law says. We're required to do.
But I saw that in here where it defines that. It specifies that, the 35 or less, but then it defined any other county road with a speed limit less than 35. That's
I
not
don't
what
know,
you're
is
asking?
that broad enough? Maybe that tells it all
Seems
right
pretty
there.
broad.
So what's your next
Anyway,
steps?
I'm all for
The
it.
next step
Let's
is
go.
for
Two steps.
the commissioners to, I think we have to go in front of a public forum.
Have a legal review and present all that.
This ordinance has already been reviewed
Okay.
for legal. I wanted to make sure that it had been reviewed by legal before I even presented it to you.
Yeah, sure.
So I have all the right answers, but the best answers. So from my understanding, it's a process that has to go in front of, or how you allow it to go in front.
So what's
So
the next
may outline the process. So I will bring this matter as traditionally next Tuesday for your final decision. And the decision for you will be to set a public hearing and before you entertain this particular legislation. And that's what is required, is a public hearing. So if you decide to move forward, then I'll contact the sheriff's office, we'll coordinate on setting the public hearing. And at that point, based on the public testimony, you may be in the position to take an action for or against this particular legislation.
I'm for it.
That's fine.
We'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Sheriff.
I just have one question, Sheriff, before you leave. On the prior thing about the regional training center, have you been part and parcel of any of those discussions at all? Or been invited to meet with them regarding
I have
that?
not, and when we're talking about a regional training center for law enforcement, I probably have about three, 3 to 4 leadership classes, just one-day classes that usually have over 100 and some people. And then I also have leadership training that we do, that I offer to all of the Region 3 sheriffs. And it's been extended to the local city jurisdictions. They just choose not to go to it. But if I have those training classes, I'm usually up at close to 50. And we're utilizing our sheriff's office, our operations bureau for all that training.
And can you explain for the public what Region 3 encompasses?
Region 3 encompasses Lewis County, Grace Harbor, Mason County, Pacific, and Thurston County. But when we have the leadership conferences, we tend to have to either use the fairgrounds as a location. If not, we've been fortunate enough to be able to utilize North Thurston High School for a couple of our trainings during their breaks.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So we're still on commissioner items. The next item we have is the Department of Justice grant follow-up.
Yeah, this is related, also known as the Burn Grant. So as a matter of a little bit of background, the county has been receiving this grant for many years, and the intent we have used this grant in elements of the business, which includes improving the public defense technology to reduce delays in court proceedings, reducing the number of and size of paper files, increasing coordination across the county criminal justice, increasing efficiencies and professionalism during the pretrial, trial, sentencing, and other court proceedings. It appears that back in 2017, the Department of Justice changed some of the requirements related to this grant. And some of the requirements are related to how the county will respond to ICE agents related to illegal immigrants. As far as I understand, this particular language and requirements has already been challenged, not just here in Washington State, but also across the country. And I believe it's already in the federal courts as to how that is going to be decided. And because it appears to be there is a lot of controversy related to those requirements. As it pertains to Thurston County, you set up a public comment period which ended last Tuesday. And as reported last Tuesday, you received quite a significant public testimony related to this grant. I encourage you not to accept this grant at this point, which is in 2018 is $25,000. The result of the public testimony you received last Tuesday, you decided to take that item from the consent agenda, and also directed me to work with the prosecuting attorney's office to do a legal review of this particular matter. In the past week, working with your attorney, as well as the prosecuting attorney's office, it has been determined that perhaps the issues are so complex and there's a lot of unknowns at this point as to how this particular language will stand or not in the future. That perhaps at this point, my recommendation, as well as the recommendation from the prosecuting attorney's office, is to forego the 2017 money, is also forego the 2018 potential grant that it might be before you. And that is my recommendation for you at this point. I don't think we have all the elements in place for we as a staff to give you the perspective in order for you to make an informed decision, because there's still a lot of unknowns on this particular language, and there's still a lot of unknowns as to how the federal courts will rule on this particular challenge. So that's my recommendation for you. I think foregoing the monies at this point is a prudent approach, and this grant will come back again in 2019, And at that point, we'll see how those requirements of the certification will work. And at that point, you will have another decision point whether you like to approve this grant in 2019 or not.
Comments or questions, curiosity?
Are you aware of what kind of restrictions? I thought we had some kind of a federal court declaration out of Portland or something that we're
Right.
living under.
And that's what we got into, without getting too much into the details. Back in November 2016, the Board of County Commissioners passed a resolution called as the ICE Hold 48 hours. And that is in response to the federal court ruling. And the gist of the ordinance is instruct the sheriff's office can no hold any inmate more than 48 hours if that inmate has not been charged, regardless of the immigration status. And that is already in place. But at this point, it becomes extremely difficult to, at least from my point of view, to explain to the general public all the different nuances, whether it's the local law versus the federal law, and the challenges that perhaps they already are in place related to the federal requirements. And because of the complexity of the issue itself, and that is my recommendation for you to forego those grants at this point.
And is that the Board of County Commissioners jurisdiction to decline it, or the prosecuting attorneys?
It's a combination. The prosecuting attorneys provides a recommendation because this is a grant related to a budget, and you are the legislative authority who takes action on budget-related items. That's how the nexus is created.
Okay. And that's why, as a result of the public testimony, we pulled it and sent it to the prosecutor for legal review. It almost seems like we did a ready, fire, aim on this grant, because in the past these have always been under consent items. We routinely, across the country, law and justice components accept these grants from the federal government. And I wasn't aware of that change in the language last year, so I'm glad it came, however it came to our attention, I'm glad it did. Does this, I would almost request a legal review of all federal grants that we're applying for, so this doesn't come up and surprise us again.
Yeah, and that's a fair request. And you are correct. And sometimes we as a staff go through the process because we have accepted this grant in the past, and we perceive to be business as usual, but unfortunately it's not. And that's what I believe we have the public comment period, in which the public has the opportunity to provide some feedback, and the county and you as a commissioners have heard those concerns, and we have gone through the process of doing the legal review and come back to you with a recommendation to not to accept those.
Well, good. I applaud the prosecuting attorney for doing that as well.
All right, one more comment?
I'm just trying to get to the financial aspect of this. Currently, we're always under, well, currently under threat of litigation having to do with jail overcrowding. We're actually, we bill other jurisdictions oftentimes when we have inmates in that facility, the sheriff does. And do the federal folks pay the same as other jurisdictions when holding prisoners in the county jail? Right.
I am not aware.
If they were to hold, if they're there, do we get reimbursed? I mean, we're operating under conditions that we don't have enough revenue, we don't have enough bed space. We have to go out and rent beds from, I don't know, Benton County or Lewis County. So doesn't this just compound the problem if we hold those prisoners?
It could be. But again, the ordinance that you passed on the board back in 2016 passed, it really was a response to federal.
Then that was the federal court out of Portland, right?
Right. Okay. But in reality, I think what you're stating is if big if were to hold those individuals, yeah, it will be a cost associated with that.
In which we don't seem to have enough beds as it is right now, right?
So it's my understanding that we don't hold inmates based strictly on the ICE request, but we do hold inmates who are charged or convicted, and we do receive payment from the federal government for illegal aliens that we hold who are charged.
If they've been charged.
It has been
Yes.
charged.
If they've been charged
And
or
that is
convicted.
that is the
That's
difference. That is
key.
the critical
Right.
Right.
element.
And we're talking about
That is the-
individuals that have not been charged,
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
So if the individual has not been charged, we don't hold them.
Sheriff, did you have some comments?
I apologize for making a comment.
No, it's good to see you 3 times
Late
a
as
day.
it is.
Mhm.
But what I would like to make very clear is that Thurston County Jail, we ask every inmate where they're born because they are entitled to their embassy rights. And that's why we ask them. It is a policy. It is not a favorable policy, if you will, for immigration rights activists who believe that we shouldn't be asking those questions, but every individual by law,
Every week.
is entitled to their embassy. So that's why we do that.
This is important, Sheriff. I want everybody to hear this at home. This is important stuff, if you don't mind.
So, what I want to make very clear is any individual that is arrested and booked into our facility is asked where they were born at because they are entitled to their embassy rights. And that's by law that they're entitled to. So, if an individual has an ICE detainer, an immigration detainer, those are simply noted, but we do not arrest people on a detainer because a detainer is not a warrant for a person's arrest, meaning that a judge has not signed that individual's arrest. So what we do is that we just make sure that if we take an individual that has been arrested by federal law enforcement agencies like immigration or ICE, if you will, then we verify that that individual was arrested based on a warrant, not a detainer. We do not, again, we do not allow that. If an individual has a detainer for them, when we run them through the National Crime Information Center and it shows up, that's when the federal government finds out if the individual is wanted by, if you will, immigration, or whether they have a detainer out for them. They are notified. They are advised of what the status is of the inmate if they ask if the inmate is there at our facility. They are allowed to come in and speak to the individual. If the individual refuses to speak to them, then ICE leaves. But they are aware of where that individual is located at. And pending the charges, dependent on what happens to that individual. Can ICE sit outside in the front parking lot and wait for an individual to be released? Yes, they're allowed to do that, just like any other jurisdiction is allowed. So we do allow that. So if I can go back to the Burn JAG money. Burn JAG money was started from a New York police detective who was killed in the line of duty in the 1980s. A grant foundation was funded in his name. And that's why we are able to receive the funding from the Burn JAG money. Those monies, and when people oppose them, which I totally agree with it, that understanding that resources are taken away because law enforcement no longer receives the grants that is believed that we do receive, nor is the prosecutor's office receiving as many, if you will, grants out there anymore. They're almost non-existent anymore. So the reason why I say this to the commission is that if the prosecutor were to ask for funding, it's because we were at one time reliant on burn jag money, but because of the wording and how it's changed and what the expectations are of burn jag that we can no longer fulfill, it may be dependent that we or the prosecutor office still needs those funds to maintain what they're able to still do today. That's all I have to say about that.
Still a cost.
It is definitely a cost. The burn jag money obviously helped us out. It helps us out in the drug unit, especially when we're finding out that the opioid problem that we are seeing, and we've had that opioid summit in the past, is because of drug task force organizations that are coming out of Mexico and bringing the heroin up this way. And the best part about it is that I sit on Northwest HIDA board, which is the high intensity drug trafficking area board that serves 17 counties in the state of Washington, also serves Alaska and Oregon and parts of Idaho. So we are seeing that throughout at least our region. So, yes, sir.
I guess for just assurances to the public, when you do run an NCIC check on an individual and that individual comes back that there's a warrant for him out of, or her out of New York or Chehalis.
Or through immigration, or through the federal government.
Well, yeah, but as long as there is a warrant on file, then you're going to hang on to that person the same as you would for any other person. So the public is actually being protected in that regard.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The warrants that we hold people it's been signed by a magistrate.
Yep.
A detainer has not
that's
been
the
signed by a magistrate.
That's the key.
Yes, sir.
If I may, just for the general public, I'd like to read key portions of the ordinance number 15378, and that is related to the issue before you. And this ordinance was enacted in November 29, 2016, and it's related to the operational standards for the Thurston County Adult Correctional Facilities related to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE 48-hour detainer request. And the legislation states the ICE 48-hour detainer request issued pursuant to 8 CFR 287.7 will not preclude the release of any defendants from custody on bail, personal reconnaissance, or time served. The Thurston County Sheriff's Office Corrections Bureau shall treat the ICE request as merely informational and place the detainer request in the subject's book and file unless the detainer includes a warrant or order signed by a magistrate. Section 2, if the subject of an ICE 48-hour detainer request is being transferred to another jurisdiction, the Thurston County Sheriff's Office shall provide the receiving jurisdiction with a copy of the detainer request. The receiving jurisdiction may decide to enforce ICE detention. And that's the legislation passed in November 29, 2016.
All right. Thank you.
One other thing, maybe, how does this tie in with the federal court decree from Portland? Where does that fit?
Is that there was a decision in federal court in Portland that stated that detainers were not valid warrants for an individual's arrest. And what we were seeing in the state of Washington is that there were law enforcement agencies honoring detainer requests, holding on to individuals until immigration or ICE could show up to take custody of those individuals. But some of those detainers or the wait period was becoming longer, and they weren't showing up to those for a few days. And so after reviewing it, we found, and when the law came out of Portland, it was a Supreme Court decision that that you could not do that legally. And so we were finding that most jails in the state of Washington no longer honor detainers. I think there might be one or two that still do, but I don't know where their legal's at.
So the question on the table is to accept or reject the Barron grant from the prosecuting attorney. And your direction is?
I guess I'd move that we do not accept it until we get this stuff figured out.
There you go, 3-0.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
You know, I'd just take a minute and thank Esther for bringing this to our attention.
A while back, about a month ago.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
whenever it came about.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Esther.
So that completes item number 2. Item number 3 is Lawrence Lake LMD, Lake Management District.
Timmy.
So I have Jennifer and Tim. Give a little bit of background and frame it, and then
Yeah, this is a conversation with the board related to how the finances with the LMDs are coming together. This is leading to the budget decisions that you might be coming up for 2019 and 2020. This particular matter is related to a staff person who used to provide assistance to the LMDs. That person since retired, and without naming names, that staff person used to provide fully her whole time for the LMD as well as for all LMDs, the Long Lake as well as the Lake Lawrence. Since that retirement, the staff has gone through the process as to how they can streamline the process and also see how they can better utilize the different resources and provide much better services to the both lake management districts, again, Long Lake and Lawrence Lake. Through that conversation, there has been and staff will walk you through as to the splits of that particular new staff as to how that is going to be providing services to both LMDs. But the gist of this conversation is going to be how the indirect costs are allocated to the LMDs. But it appears to be a source of discussion with particularly with the Lake Lawrence. And since this is a budget-related issue, I'd like to bring this to the full board's attention and see where we go from there. And staff is here to give you the background and answer any questions you may have.
Perfect. Thanks, Ramiro, and good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So to back up and kind of reiterate what...
Introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Tim Wilson. I'm the Noxious Weed and Lakes Program Manager within Public Works. And so to back up and kind of reiterate what Ramiro has said, we're here today to talk about interfund costs as they're allocated amongst the 3 enterprise funds that I manage within Noxious Weed and Lakes, and specifically how they apply to Lawrence Lake Management District. And as you're no doubt aware, because we've been here several times, staff, along with engagement from the steering committees for both LMDs, have been engaged over the last 2 years in really trying to take a look at addressing the interfund costs and looking for efficiencies within those programs. We've made significant changes in regards to vehicles and geodata costs that were a significant hit to those budgets, and have made some positive changes in that regard. The latest proposal, which the board, again, will see in the preliminary budget, is a recommendation that the Noxious Weed Program partially fund the Aquatic Resource Specialist position. This reorganization is proposed by staff in an attempt to reduce the personnel costs for the two LMDs, which it does in a quite dramatic way. The reduction, I would add that the reduction is due to business process efficiencies and is not tied directly to workload. And that's part of the perception I think that we're struggling with is that this is entirely tied to FTE. When I say it reduced the personnel costs in a dramatic way, to give you an example, the 2017-2018 budget for Lawrence Lake has FTE level staffing at 0.475 FTE. That includes, as Romero said, 30% of what was the aquatic resource specialist position, and then 0.175% of that was for additional FTE support, and that is management support, that is technical support from the rest of the division to support lake projects. If we go out onto the lake, county policy requires that we have 2 county staff out there for safety issues. So the 2019-2020 proposal basically cut everything in half, roughly. It took it from a 0.475 FTE down to a 0.24 FTE that is allocated within the division to Lake Lawrence. So as you're aware, there have been questions from a portion of the Lawrence L&D Steering Committee regarding the interfund costs for that, and I'm hoping to answer your questions and address that. The briefing memo that you have before you is an attempt to break the roughly $7,200 in interfund costs that are charged to Lake Lawrence into three general categories. And to back up, the $7,200 represents about 7% of the revenue that Lake Lawrence brings in on an annual basis. And I think it's important for comparison, to compare that to the Noxious Weed Fund, another enterprise fund. They pay about 33% of the revenues that they bring in of their roughly $577,000 goes to interfund costs. So we're starting out much lower, but breaking it out into the categories, about 60%, roughly, very roughly, or $4,176 of the interfund costs that are charged to Lake Lawrence are considered indirect costs. So staff does not have discretion over those at all. Those are pushed out by the county auditor's office. It's based on a BOCC approved federal cost allocation plan, and it's charged directly to the funds. The good news for those funds is by taking the approach of reducing those FTEs, most of those are on a 2-year lag. So the relatively small proportion of those indirect costs that do have a direct tie to FTEs, and it's much smaller than I thought it was, will be affected 2 years down the road. So by cutting staff by 50% in 2019, we are anticipating a positive change in indirect costs in 2021, if that makes sense. And a point I wanted to illustrate again is just that, only a portion of these indirect costs as well are tied to FTE. It's based a lot on transaction. I would invite Robin and Romero to chime in here. But it's based on other factors as well as FTEs. The second category I wanted to talk about is relatively small. It's $682 of their interfund costs, but it has a bit of an FTE tie in that, and it's in regards to space for the lake program within our division, and as part of that is the custodial services, the utilities, everything that goes into maintaining that space. Of that $682, we look at the entire staff, the FTEs for the division, which for 2019 is roughly 4.45 FTEs. If you look at that, about 16% of the total Noxious Weed and Lake staff serving the combined lake management districts. I'm sorry, I'm going to back up. The proposed staffing efficiencies results in approximately 16% of the total Noxious Weed and Lake staff serving the LMDs, the combined LMDs, and 14.5% of the cost of the space is charged out to the LMDs jointly. And from there, it's split further. The third category leaves about $2,400 remaining. This takes into account vehicle maintenance. As you'll recall, we got rid of their one vehicle that we were contributing to future replacement. So that's gone. What is left is a little bit of maintenance and operations. It also takes into account computer and software support and other categories. If you look at these costs as compared to the entire interfunds across our department, they are very low as they're charged out to Lake Lawrence. The geodata, for instance, which likely consists of at least a third of the geodata that we use would be for the lakes. Lake Lawrence is charged 0.7% of those costs, so less than 1% of the over $38,000 that were charged for geodata goes to Lake Lawrence. And on the high end of those, 3.2% of the total cost is charged to phone usage. So the charges that we are charging out that we have any discretion over at all are being charged out very low to Lake Lawrence. I guess I would direct you to the very bottom table. These are areas where we do have that discretion at the staff level. We can look at application replacement, mailroom costs, postage costs, and so in those cases we take the total interfund costs. 90% of that is paid for the Noxious Weed Fund. 7% is paid by Long, and 3% is paid by Lawrence. And in some of the documentation that went out early on, you see a 70-30 split for some of these categories. What's hard to understand from those tables is 90% of that is pulled off and paid by the Noxious Weed Fund first. So it's not really a 70-30%, it's a 7%, 3% cost allocated to the interfunds. I tried to illustrate in the table here for you based upon whether we look at total revenue for the department, which is roughly $800,000 between the three enterprise funds, or if we look at total staffing for the department, which is about 4.45 FTEs again. However you compare it, the interfund costs for both of the lake management districts are much lower than we would expect based upon those categories. So that's how we are allocating the interfunds within the departments. Again, we don't have a lot of discretion over many of them. When we do, they're heavily weighted towards the Noxious Weed Fund, and we've had those conversations with the Noxious Weed Board as well, which is charged with managing that program and those funds, and there's definitely some concerns on their end how to manage the $180-some thousand in interfund costs.
All right, Jeff, any questions or comments?
On Thursday, you'll hear how the interfunds for Public Works total budget actually total about 12% overall.
Any comments or questions?
Where are we at on concurrence with the lake management districts themselves? What's new? Everybody in agreement that we've finally worked this out?
No.
Okay.
Very, very different opinions at this point from the two Lake Management District steering committees. Long Lake, whereas as you guys are well aware, nobody's happy with interfund costs. However, Long Lake, I believe at this point, is supportive of the allocation, understands the allocation, understands the improvements that we have made, understands that when we get down to that 7%, 3% distribution, that they are probably being inequitably charged for that in comparison to the revenues that they bring in comparison to Lake Lawrence or at the staffing level, which is almost double. So they're paying 70% of the
10%.
They're paying of the 10% that is left after noxious weed fund pays 90%. They're paying 70% of that portion, and it probably should be less than that. Lake Lawrence is not in agreement. They have a contingent of the steering committee that's been working on budget-related issues, and they think the costs are too high.
I'll just ask Jennifer this. Has there been any changes since you and I had a conversation a week or two ago about this?
No, this is the same information, just trying to explain it in a different way. The one item that is being considered is the removal of the pontoon boat. You want to speak a little bit to the cost of that, but that's more for the future.
So the pontoon boat, there's concern primarily with the Lake Lawrence group for the ongoing M&O cost for a pontoon boat that is owned between the two LMD funds. As you'll recall, along with getting rid of surplusing the vehicle for the LMDs, we stopped contributing to the future replacement of that pontoon boat, and the agreement at that point was that we would keep the pontoon boat and continue to pay the maintenance and operation costs, which run about $350 a year for that. There is growing enthusiasm, I would say, to get rid of that boat. I am in support of that, as if the steering committees want to do that, but do not agree with it as a management approach, in that we will then need to charge them if we go out and use a boat. We will need to charge for those costs, and my fear is that it will become more expensive for them to manage their work plan without that boat. However, we're in support. If the two LMDs agree to get rid of that, we'll get rid of it.
Do they have citizens on those lakes that are willing to take yourself or staff out in lieu of hauling a boat over there?
They do at this point. Both Long Lake and Lake Lawrence have staff that are available specifically for weed surveys. We primarily use their boats. My concern is, will we have that in the future? We also do in-lake initiatives when we go out and we put a sprayer in our boat. What we've done in the past is we put a crew out and we're treating portions of the lake while we're also using the pontoon boat to do the ecology required posting along the lake shore, which is a state requirement. It's an efficient way to do it by having all the staff located out there and doing it in that manner.
What's the bottom line up front?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was.
So the bottom line up front, it appears to be a confusion, at least from my point of view, from Lawrence Lake members. And I think they're gravitating on the 30% of the indirect cost. But is the 30% of their shares out of the only 10% of the overall? And I think the table included on the bottom of the memo illustrates clearly, because out of the overall interfund costs of the 100%, 90% of that is going to be funded by the WEEDS program. On a 60.8%, 9%, and 3% is going to be funded by the Long Lakes. And I think that's probably lies the confusion from my point of view. And I understand some of the lake management districts, I mean, particularly Lawrence Lake. I mean, they'd like to see how they can better spend their resources. I understand. But also, from the county's perspective, the indirect cost allocation is established by general accounting rules. And you, as a commissioners, approve that on a yearly basis. You will be approving for the 2019-2020. And what staff is playing is the 2-year lag. And Robin can explain much better than I can. Is the 2-year lag is whatever inter fund costs that are allocated right now is based on the 2017 costs. So if we go through that process on the Long Lake, those indirect costs of 2017 included a full-time position dedicated to both lakes, right? So moving forward, now that staff position in 2019-2020 is going to be much reduced to those lakes. So when you see the budget for 2020 perhaps, and you establish the indirect costs, those indirect costs will be reduced dramatically. And that's what I think what we're facing right now is the accounting rules. My perception that perhaps the Lawrence Lake see the 30%, but it's not the 30% of the overall indirect cost. It's 30% of the 10% after 90% is taken.
I got to interrupt you just a little bit there, but your 10% is 10% of almost $1 million. Is that right?
No.
Is it 10%? Didn't
No.
you tell me it was about 900,000 or?
No.
That's a
The
total
fund?
That's a total revenue that the 3 funds bring in as revenue.
Yes.
Okay. So the 10% is only a portion of the interfunds that are charged. So if you look at the total interfunds, the interfunds that applies to is roughly $2,700 is Lake Lawrence's portion. So I guess I'd have to do some calculations real quick, but no, the $800,000 that you're referring to is the total revenue that the departments bring in, that the divisions bring in, or the funds bring in, I'm sorry.
And that's not part of the cost allocation process you're using for electricity, office space, cleaning, all that? I mean, I have to say, this is just about as clear as mud to me. And if it's not clear to me, and it's not clear to the citizens who we're trying to serve, I'm hesitant to move forward with anything until it is clear, until we figure this out. So what's the bottom line? What do you expect here?
The decision is not for you to make a decision today. You will make those decisions during the budget process.
Well, so we need some more work before the budget process.
So let me help you out. I need a drawing. Draw it out. Word it out ain't working for me, so I'm just telling you, I need to draw it out. So no more, you can add whatever, but it's hurt my head trying to figure out who's doing what.
So I just wanted to interject that you have already approved the rates, both the internal service and the indirect rates for 2019.
Well, maybe we need to readjust that.
Budget reviews.
Can I get a graphic?
Adjust for the whole county?
I don't know. I don't agree with what's going on. So said we did something, well, maybe we need to rethink what we did.
It will have a ripple effect to the entire budget of the county.
Well,
It would be small, but it would be a definite ripple. So what we would need to do is review the different cost allocation methods that are used to calculate the share that ultimately goes to Lawrence Lake Management District.
Okay.
And we could certainly take that on if you'd like to, but that would be a huge
well, I'm looking for the photo, the drawing.
Can you and Robin get together, and Tim and Romero put a little drawing together with what she's saying? I get the words, but I don't understand the comprehensiveness of this.
Absolutely.
Just just because of it has impact, but I don't see how the impact happens, is where I'm trying to figure out the kind of picture show, if you will, on a 8x11 or 2 pages, something like that. I understand the words, don't get me wrong, I just can't really wrap my head around it.
I'll help you.
And
So pictorial would help me a lot, sorry.
Yeah, I need a picture. Go ahead.
yeah,
We need a picture.
and I'm a little
something.
confused about the .47 and the .32. That isn't the way the decimal. That isn't where the decimal ought to be, in my estimation. And so some of that needs to be clarified. Maybe that's what threw me off.
So we'll back up and try again, basically, okay? So no harm, no foul, just where we're at in life. Anything else? No, it's all good. We got to get to the.
Thank you.
It's got to happen.
Thank you.
We just want to understand it.
Thank you.
All right.
And at the same time, coordinate with the management districts, because that's ultimately, you're going to have to be selling it.
If I may, I think
Yes.
there's extensive coordination that's going on with the districts. I think where we are right now is with Long Lake, as Tim mentioned, and even for the departments. I mean, no one loves the interfund costs and the cost increasing. So I think it's more about an understanding of what we actually have control over, what we actually are able to manage and make adjustments on, and where we aren't able to do that. And so that's what we're trying to explain and show the difference between, while we have one position that is no longer just dedicated to the 2 lake management districts, now it's 50% of that person's position. Work hours are dedicated. There is not a direct correlation between FTEs and all of those costs that are allocated. It's different allocations. And so that is what, unfortunately, we have been unsuccessful in communicating. But that is what I've been trying, and Tim has been trying to explain. And we do believe that we've effectively communicated that with Long Lake. We have not effectively communicated that with Lake Lawrence, or conversations you and I have had.
Or with this board.
That's what I said, or conversations
So
you and I have had.
I like to think I'm capable of common sense, understanding,
Sure.
but I'm not a bookkeeper. So
Well, and I would say,
I don't know what it needs, but it needs something more.
A drawing.
sure. And this is not, I will say, this is not unique to every single fund. The methodology is the same.
It's exactly the same for every.
I'm moving on. Sorry. I'm going to Single Tree Estates. Nuisance property.
Josh.
Josh was right here.
He's coming, Josh. He's
Oh, there he
there he
is.
is.
You're grabbing a printer.
And Shoreline.
And thank you, by the way, for your attempt at
Thank you.
clarification.
Yeah, it's not a problem. Just can't figure out all the little tiny pieces of it at one
We're
spot.
gonna do single tree first, I think. You wanna sit over for single tree? You don't need to.
Oh, I thought you were done,
Not quite yet, almost.
Jump the gun.
All right, hello commissioners.
What's the
Good
bluff?
morning.
Joshua Cummings, the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. Apologize for my husky voice this morning, I'm working on a cold. This is Single Tree Estates nuisance property. This is, again, an attempt for our department to work with citizens that have questions, concerns about things happening in their neighborhood. This in particular, maybe I'll pass this around,
Can you tell us what the bottom line
is a nuisance property that has lots of problems in terms of safety issues and rats and all sorts of stuff, and the neighborhood wants it to go away. And so they have been working with us to find ways to either condemn the property, foreclose the property, for the HOA to foreclose the property. And they have asked that the commissioners start the process and consideration of taking the lead on foreclosing this property, foreclosing on this property. I believe that Commissioner Edwards' assistant, Vicki Larkin, is aware of this issue and has partnered with us on multiple meetings with their constituents. And our staff has had meetings with Rick Peters in the prosecuting attorney's office, as well as Travis Burns. Travis is sick today also. so he's not able to join us. But I wanted to make sure that this was brought to your attention and open for discussion. So that's kind of the bottom line is we want to serve the citizens.
Is that a health issue?
There are health issues in Gallipoli.
Where's PHHS in on this?
They have participated in these discussions as well.
To what degree and what level?
Everybody is in agreement that a foreclosure process would be fine. But it's the who is going to take the lead. Is it the county or the HOA, the Single Tree Estates HOA? And the Single Tree Estates Homeowners Association has asked that we, the county, take the lead and that we have first position in whatever funding comes out of the sale of the foreclosed property. They've ceded that to us if we take the lead on it.
It doesn't really matter if it's a health issue. It's a health issue, regardless of HOA or any other entity.
The foreclosure process is a legal proceeding, and so that's what we've been told by our legal counsel is
How
that
bad is the health issue?
it's bad enough that it can be foreclosed upon.
What's that?
I would just like to expand on that a bit, that this is in a community development by a bus stop where kids congregate, and it's a nightmare for parents to be worried about this. It's a fire hazard, it's a rat hazard, it's very
fine.
detrimental to the
Okay.
community.
I just don't want anything to do with HOA no matter what.
You don't want to what? I'm sorry.
The HOA is irrelevant to me. It's a health issue, and it's a public nuisance, not a public nuisance, public health issue, and that's what we do is take care of public health, whether it's HOA or any other entity out there. I understand that might be recommending it, but if it's public health issue, it's a public health issue, and that's what we do for taking care. We do it no matter if we do for the assessor or services or the sheriff as a service. This is what we do under the commissioners as far as public health and public defense and all that. It's just one of those things we do. So if you and others have decided that's what it is and it's legally done, then that's what we do. So regardless of who recommended it. Let's go to Robin first.
Would we be foreclosing under public health rules or under code compliance rules?
So we've had both of those conversations with our legal counsel, and there's kind of two different routes, and we haven't yet. So we've gathered enough information to get to this discussion. And then if you, as the Board of County Commissioners, say, yes, Josh, CPED should proceed with these foreclosing procedures, we'll start to work with our legal counsel on the how. We just need to get to the should we do this. And it sounds like we're looking towards a yes.
Okay, it's not quite, but let me try him. He's had it.
We've been dealing with this since 1996, and more specifically since 15. There's been significant action, as documented. That was a great document. Documented that, hey, we're going to start foreclosing on it 3 years ago.
So both our staff and the Homeowners Association has done a really good job documenting, and we've also, the property owner worked with us at one point and then stopped working with us. So there's an expansive amount of time from 96, and then it starts again in 2015. But yes, you're right, it's been a long history with this property.
Yeah, this is silly. Let's make it go away.
Well, I understand you want the guidance to be able to go forward, but I also say to you and directors in the legal aspect of this, if it's a issue, I don't want you to come here and look for guidance, make it happen. You're empowered to do that kind of stuff, and you have a county manager and move forward. I don't understand why it's even an issue
But I
to
think
discuss today. So.
because the prosecuting attorney needs to go to court and file a legal proceeding, and that has to be a direction by the board whether they'd like to take that action or not. And I think, as far as I understand, the Homeowners Association has the option to foreclose this property under their own rules. And so the question is whether you like the county to proceed with this and
if it's a health issue, it's a
And
health
solve
issue.
the problem.
Health issue.
Yeah,
This
I
is
don't care
all
about
there
this
is.
at all. They can do it.
And if it's, I wouldn't want any entity to be the guiding principle making our decision, because then you get a precedence of others wanting to start. If it's a health issue and it's our job to do that, then that's what we do.
and that is probably our job as a staff, is to make sure that whatever decisions you make also set a precedent. And, and I don't recall, and somebody can help me on this, if the county has ever condemned or foreclosed a property under those conditions in the past. And not to say that you may want to do it.
If it's a health
Yeah,
issue, then you
so,
wanna do it.
and-
But I
and-
want to make sure everything is lock, stock, and barrelly detailed, that we're legally able to do this, and for the right health reasons, they make that declaration known to every citizen in the world that we're doing the right thing, so.
And the next step is, one thing is foreclosing the property,
Mm-hmm.
and then the board will be facing with that decision where the money is going to come from to clean it. So, and those are the next steps they will need to go through.
Public
that
process and services that they're
and-
designed to do.
And just to make you aware, there is only one property out of many in the county. They're
There's
facing
the problem
same
right
chip.
there.
So-
Yeah.
And that's what you need to weigh in is.
So how many do we have total? And that's why I'm wondering, where's PHHS on this?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question.
So I got lots of questions. Let's go with Gary, Commissioner Evers, and then Robbins.
No, just that the uniqueness, yes, there are other properties. A lot of times those are junkers that probably we can't recover. On this particular property, as soon as we get this cleared off of here, we'll have value and we can recover the cost because it's within a very decent development.
Will it go to tax title?
I doubt it. I think it'll go up for auction when we're all done. And I would guess we will recover the costs adequately to cover what we're doing, because all we need to do is get the process through that's done here for years and years and years, and then crush it up and haul it away, and then we've got a vacant lot that we can put on the auction blocks, or however we would dispose of it, and recover our costs, all of our costs at that time. And then if there's anything left, I guess the legal owner of the property maybe gets that back. But it isn't like we're out there running around doing this with no hope of recovery.
So I guess, no, do you have a thing I had?
And it's empty, it's abandoned completely,
Oh, yeah.
except for rats.
Yes.
And spiders.
Yeah.
What is the policy on this? Because I'm just fearful that HOA number 1 says, okay, we like it, but HOA number 2 and somewhere else in the county says, you did it for them, let's do it there. I want some guiding principle to say this is now to the extreme, just like we did with the Burnell property or whatever, that it's met that criteria. Title 26, I guess, I don't know, because it's an egregious act of some sort. I don't know. I'm just trying to make sure we get behind policy versus the location. So location's irrelevant to me.
This would set a precedence because up until now, the county has not had
Oh,
a fund or made funds available for cleaning property. And it's one
Abatement.
of the things that we've avoided because it would set a precedence. And there has been a concern over the years that we would not be able to recoup our costs. So this policy has been discussed in the past.
I remember.
And nothing has come of
So
it.
do,
So we don't have a policy.
where, I know we've talked about it, so we're at least at discussion phase. I know that for the last 4 years, and we've got anything on writing. I'm not looking at you, the lucky sole person here with the, there should be other people here. We're at least some discussion of legal, operational, and financial development of this to make policy out of this. Do we need a whiteboard, in other words, to be able to say how we go forward with this?
I think it requires additional conversation.
With the
Because
whiteboard.
at least my concern, as from the administrative point of view, is the precedent setting. Whether this particular action may result in recovering the cost, that's not necessarily the objective.
Yeah, it's
That
not
could
the
be
total
that will be a
objective,
good
right. The health
consequence
issue
of
is
this.
what I'm after.
But it's really, as you stated, Commissioner, homeowner associations number 2 and 3 can make the same argument, and we will be bound by setting the precedent to continue with this process.
Right.
In this particular
Get
case,
slow rolled in.
Right. In this particular case, perhaps is another option where the homeowners association can proceed with the foreclosure property and the county can support those efforts.
Well, in that discussion, there is a partnership. I
Right.
see that it
In a
could
partnership,
happen.
and I think that's something that perhaps the commissioners may consider. But I think if I may suggest, I think it's too premature for you to make a decision on this, if I may, because you need to consider really all with a
Okay,
wider lens,
so
some of the consequences
One more
of your
thing, Gary.
actions.
Without a doubt, then set it on one of those, what what do we call those, planning sessions?
Planning sessions?
Yep, put that on there to whiteboard it out, if nothing else. I don't know what, you want to make you can't make a decision today.
No, I know, I don't want to make a decision, but I disagree that every precedent is identical.
Oh, I agree.
Each one of these situations are different, and when we take an action, it doesn't automatically mean we're obligated forever after that.
No.
Because no situation is going to be identical.
No, but that was exactly spell that out in policy, and that way at least you have the flexibility and the wherewithal to be able to do the right thing. So you put two in the same policy. It's got to get behind policy, or else you'll
And
just-
I appreciate that because I think it requires a policy. It requires a conversation with the prosecuting attorneys. Because I agree with you. And every single action requires a precedent
you
setting.
need to build it.
But what is left, absent a policy, is for you to make, for you to be put in the position to make a decision based on a case-by-case basis without having that
Right, a hasty
policy.
decision, a hasty
That
decision.
goes into the policy.
Right.
So this absolutely is a public health issue, and I see in your report, in your notebook there, that Dr.
needs
Woods
to be
was
done.
consulted and
Yeah,
weighed
yeah,
in.
yeah.
But I didn't read,
Just
I
don't
didn't
have
read what she
policy
said
to
or
get behind.
what her opinion was, but I see that public health officer was consulted on this issue years ago.
Yes.
I'd just like to show the citizens that we actually can do something for them once in a while. This has been, a forever situation these people have been dealing with. And,
The
I mean,
only
that's
other,
what to me, that's what government is about. It's about
well, you
public
can
safety.
declare an emergency and go that way, and
I'd be willing to do that,
you need
but
to
I
have
think
a
we
few
need
more
to talk
people
about
here,
it no
but
matter what we do.
that in itself is a policy. But if there's 18 others out there that we need to look at, then you need a policy so that you can judiciously, operationally, and financially approach each one of those for the right reason.
And we're not here because of you, Josh. We know this is what you're doing.
No.
That's great.
So I will bring this item to an upcoming planning session, and what I will bring is public
Bring on.
health and legal aspects, so you have the room full of the experts who can give you a perspective, and hopefully as a result of that, we can start drafting a policy that you feel comfortable moving forward.
And code compliance. We gotta-
Yeah.
So all that, we'll
In the
organize.
meantime, is there such an urgency or emergency, either one of those words there at that spot where there is an outbreak of a disease or some sort of health issue that we need to say, cordon that off or
Yeah,
anything like
sure,
that? I just
fence
want
it
to
or
don't
something.
omit that, even though I'm on one side of policy, I'm on the other side of emergency. Is there something where it needs to be cordon off or what's the other word I'm looking for? It starts with a C. It's like,
Condemn it, or,
that kind of talk in order to be able to say.
I'd say there is.
You're not a legislator, you're a legislator, they're health people, let them do their part.
But we're gonna know it soon as some kid gets in there and ends up dead.
We're gonna talk to the county manager, he does
The
that.
risk is there, and I'm not trying to minimize the risk. The
No.
risk is there, and the risk has been there for
You have
years.
two sets of actions here.
And the risk has been there for quite some time.
Okay.
Whether there's a sense of
then
urgency right now, I think it depends on who you ask.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm only asking you, directors and county staff, and what little public input I need to be able to help out. So that's a community effort, but for what we do as a government to make sure health is one of our issues. She had a question or comment, so.
Well, I have a comment because I was part of the meeting that we had with our legal counsel, and they said once we started looking at this and discussing
Are we
it,
on it?
at the very minimum, we need to secure it with fencing until something is done, until the abatement of a dangerous building.
I would ask you, what's the assessment of that?
So I wasn't aware the legal counsel has put that position. Just because you have a conversation about this matter, you're obligated to fence it. I will be curious. I will be curious
So that's
to
a
learn.
task.
I will be curious to learn from the legal perspective as to what the tie is between you having a conversation on this issue, and then you'll be bound
And
to put up
tangible.
fencing.
Right.
I just don't see the
So can you
commission
look-
with all due
wait a second,
respect.
Can you look into that one particular question?
Yeah.
And only, okay? Go ahead.
If you look at the history involving this, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be successful in going in there. I don't think we need a fence. We just go in there and crunch it all up and put it in a dumpster. If it costs $3,000, we'll put it against it.
If there's
And
24 more of them like that, you want to do the same thing?
if it's as bad as this, yes.
You don't have a penny to do any of this, how are you going to pay for it?
we can make the recovery on the sale of the property.
But
That's
you
a
don't, the county doesn't have the right to get into private property and do that work.
This is
That
why we
will-
need policy.
That will be trespassing.
I know, I love you to death, but you need a
And
policy.
unfortunately, that is the difficulty we as a government.
I want it bad as you do, but trust me, you've got to build a framework and a structure so that you can move through to get to everything you want to do.
We don't have the money to go out there with a fence.
Well, you'll
either.
put money towards
Well,
it.
no,
yeah.
we don't have that either.
Well, you got
in
money for a
reality.
fence. You got money for a fence.
Get a container out there and squish it up.
And I would like to have our county health officer weigh in on this. If
Certainly.
she has seen it, visited, or whatever information she has, to make a recommendation as well.
You
Or
know-
at least an assessment of the risks to the public health.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, the only thing that's walk away from here, if we finish with this discussion, is the tasking of Romero and whoever wants to be involved answering the fence question.
Yeah.
And
Well-
then second of that is how we move forward with policy in order to solve one or many more of these, unless there is a absolute emergency from the health officer and or director and yourself and then Romero to say, this has got to move faster on it versus slower on it. We're going to move on it. Don't get me wrong on that. It's just how fast or how slow. Okay. Cool beans? Because we provide health just as much as we provide any water.
No,
security
at least
and
from my
everything.
point of view, this is good.
Yeah.
I know that, we meet the intent.
Well, that's the good thing
But
about
it's,
having three
but it's-
different
it's-
people. I mean,
it is a difficult situation, and you understand it. But also, at least from my point of view, I have the obligation also to protect the interior of the county.
Oh, yeah.
And making the right decisions when moving on.
Robin, did you have something? You had your hand up a little bit ago. All right.
Thank you. That was the discussion that I wanted to have. I appreciate that.
Single
Thank you.
tree, single.
Let's try.
Wow, I remember
Yeah,
that.
Shoreline.
it is. This is a complicated issue.
Yeah, shoreline management plan
Okay.
in 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Well. Come on up. So we got Cindy Wilson, the manager of community planning, and Brad Murphy, the lead staff on the Shoreline Master Program, joining me at the table. So this goes back to the Shoreline Master Program, as you got it abbreviated there, SMP. And County Manager, would you like to start with the framing, or should we jump in? Or?
Someone in here?
I believe this is a follow-up as to the extent of the public engagement, as I call it, in preparation to a draft SMP. And the staff is here to provide you some of the next steps as to how that public engagement will occur in relation to the steps that we need to take with the Planning Commission, and eventually for you to set a public hearing before you can make a final decision on this particular SMP. And I think staff has a good approach, and just want to make sure that the board is agreeing with that approach, or at least we meet the intent of your direction.
Thank you. So just want to kind of back up just a little bit. That was exactly what we're trying to accomplish here. Some of the nuances, though, might be a little, we want to make sure that they're clear. So the public hearing, actually, let me back up a little more. In spring of 2018, staff, Brad Murphy, provided, as was directed, a very aggressive timeline on how quickly we could accomplish the goals of putting on pause the public engagement so that Brad could finish the actual draft of the Shoreline Master Program, and with a target for completion on August 1st of that draft. That was accomplished on August 1st and has been made available to the public. The only things that changed in that were as directed by the board, were the buffers on the shoreline. And you guys have seen that where we want to build, the buffers have reduced where it's good to build, and where we want to protect salmon and other fish, the buffers have increased. We've gone through that already. What the question on the table, though, is how much we engage and what kind of engagement we have with the citizens, while also maintaining that aggressive timeline of having the Planning Commission, recommending to the Planning Commission that they set their public hearing. So the date that was provided in that timeline that Brad gave in spring of 2018, the date for the Planning Commission to have their public hearing on this topic was November 14th. And that was everything stripped down and having, the document complete. We have that date as currently on the calendar that you guys have seen, but backing up and looking at how we balance the citizens' comments, which you guys have heard a lot of comments on this program from the different groups that are engaged in this, how we balance the citizens' comments, how we balance the Planning Commission's opportunity to provide input, and then how we balance staff workload in incorporating all of the comments that we've received, and they've been a lot over the past year or half a year on this topic, while also maintaining that very quick timeline. We want to have this completed as quickly as possible as directed by the board. And so we've taken a look at the timeline, and as we're thinking about how we engage citizens on this topic and how we also meet the deadlines, we want to make sure that it's clear to the commissioners that there are things that will be balanced out. If we try and maintain the November 14th recommendation to the Planning Commission of a public hearing, it may not provide enough time for citizens to have their input heard. The other option is pushing the recommendation for the Planning Commission to have their public hearing on December 5th. So it changes that November 14th deadline to the November 5th time for public hearing. One of the pieces that's being weighed on that is once you set a public hearing, so you have to set a public hearing 20 days before the public hearing happens, all of the documents have to be completed. You can't change the documents once you set the public hearing. So then that backs us up to the place where we need to include all of those red line comments that we've gotten from citizens. One of the things we've heard from citizens is they haven't seen their input reflected in the Shoreline Master Program. So for Brad to take all of those comments, I think that he's shown you the stack and it's about like this, to take all those comments, Brad has committed to a very tight timeline of 4 weeks. So getting those starting today, getting those red line comments into the draft leads us, so today is October 3rd, leads us to October 24th, which is 4 weeks from today. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's just a lot of different moving pieces on this, and I wanted to be respectful of the board and your recommendations and how we move forward, and relay to you that we're working our best, but we're not 100% sure in what direction to go at this point. Do we keep the November 14th set public hearing recommendation to the Planning Commission? Remember, this is the Planning Commission's public hearing, not the board's public hearing. Or do we push to the December 5th and allow time for those different engagements? So what staff has recommended, we have a Planning Commission meeting tomorrow night. So we talked about having 3 times for the public to meet to have input on this topic. So tonight, the public could join the Planning Commission. We have a second meeting of the Planning Commission on October 17th. And then staff is suggesting that we have a special meeting of the Planning Commission on October 24th. And at the October 24th meeting, that's when we would do extended public comment to allow for citizens to have their input. And then at the public hearing portion, there would be an opportunity for an open house. There's just a lot of different moving parts.
So where's the picture?
Wanted to check in. The picture is...
No, I needed a map. You got me going all over the map of calendars or whatever.
Seriously, so the real picture is citizen input, speed.
I got the problem set, but I don't know how to get there.
And so to get there, our recommendation is we move the recommended Planning Commission public hearing to December 5th. That allows staff time to include the red lines and for us to have some of those open houses that we discussed. And one open house and an extended public hearing where people could provide comment. So that's our recommendation, is to take that aggressive November 14th public hearing date and move it to December 5th. We still think that we can have a streamlined approach, but this will allow for the citizens to provide their input and the document to have their comments reflected in it.
So what do you need from us?
To just be okay with moving our recommendation for the public hearing to December 5th instead of November 14th.
But we don't do that.
Planning Commission.
The Planning Commission public hearing. You don't do that exactly, but I wanted to make sure you guys were aware that there's a lot of different pieces happening here, and if we don't do that, it just shortens the opportunity for public to provide their input.
Well, I don't have any favorable comments, but okay. So
I'm just curious, what does that do to the projected timeline of when this would come to the Board of County Commissioners?
So that makes the first time that the Planning Commission would receive that information on the hearing on December 5th, and then they would meet on December 19th to provide their recommendation to the board. So it pushes it. The whole thing is pushed. So the Planning Commission makes the recommendation. Again, this is aggressive as well. So depending upon if the Planning Commission accepts the information that they provided or if they don't have any more comment, the first possible decision point for the Planning Commission is December 19th.
So there had been a schedule of when this might come to the Board of County Commissioners?
No, the schedule was when the public hearing for the Planning Commission was going to be.
Okay.
That was November 14th.
I guess none
Yeah.
of us are in favor of delay, I guess, but on the other hand, if we don't go by the rules as laid out, we might be up against a situation where we haven't done it right.
So this has been the problem for 4 years.
I know, but I mean, it's my understanding you can't short circuit certain things, and if we get labeled as short circuiting, then maybe we're not successful in our ultimate goal anyway. That's my concern. I don't mind, I'll work Christmas Day if I have to. I mean, I don't like it, but.
We can get labeled either way, Russian judgment or
Well,
short-circuiting.
no, it's more than being labeled.
So,
It's,
I have no problem
it's out
taking
of
more time.
compliance type labeling or something is more my concern.
I have a problem taking more time.
I understand. Yeah, and that's why.
There'll be something else, and it'll be January, it'll be February. This is what it's been for the last 4 years. It has a history of what about this, what about that, what about this, from one aspect or another. And it's just crazy how this thing has been not taken care of in the last 4 years. I simply remember sitting here and people sitting on that side of the table saying it'll be done within a year. And here you are 3 years later, not getting it done.
I wasn't part of those conversations.
Some of it's not yours. Some of it's 2 directors before. I
Indeed.
get it. It's transitioned over and everything. But I don't want any more delay. Where's the legal precedence that says that it has to go to the Planning Commission?
Yeah, I've got
Where
it.
is that written?
In the meeting, in the meeting that you had with the planning commission, there was a packet that talks about, under state law, we are required to have a planning commission and a hearing before the planning commission. I can get that, forward that on again if you want.
Who sets the priority for them to hear things or not things? Is it us or themselves?
It's you.
Okay. Well, then I don't know what their planning roster looks like because I don't have it from memory. But if it's, I think there's a couple of things on there. But how does this one fit at the top or near the top?
And that's, I think, a priority you can make. We do have, as with everything, we always have multiple priorities.
Sure.
We have the comprehensive plan. We have we're getting done, I think, with the CFP is done, Shoreline Master Program. Mineral lens is part of the comp plan. So those are the 2 big things. We have a few code amendments, but I think, again, we've wrapped up most of those by now.
And I'm very aware that this is a high priority and something to get accomplished. I mean, this is why we kept this meeting, this discussion on the agenda today. I think it's important that we keep having these conversations to go as quickly as we can. I didn't want to delay this conversation.
All righty.
Are we done talking about it?
Well, I mean, 14/5, it'll be January, it'll be another citizen input, it'll be another delay of some sort, and you're just gonna have to make a call as to.
And I guess also I recognize, Commissioner Blake, your position also, and it's a one that I feel as well too, because as soon as we can get this accomplished, then it serves the citizens that are in a need to better understand their buffers and how they can use their property. So while we're delaying, those folks aren't being served also. So that's a big piece of this, and it's totally recognized. Understood.
Speaking of the Planning Commission in setting the priorities, based on the proposed schedule, if the Planning Commission, I think we have to make a point that by December 19, they need to provide recommendations to the board. And the recommendations to the board at that point, then you will be in the position to set a public hearing and consider that hopefully in January, as soon as
if that is the case.
Let's try that. How fast can I get a public hearing? Not me, but us.
The
Or even a
board.
recommendation back from the planning commission.
Well, so from December 19th, so the planning commission says, here, we recommend that you do a public hearing. Then it's at 20 days from there that the board can have their public
At least
hearing.
we'll lock that in.
We would have to have a meeting for you to set your public hearing. So
This is good, this is helpful. And
you'd have that, and then you'd have the 20-day notice.
Give me an approximate window of opportunity to have a
But we
public
could,
hearing.
so the
25
19th,
days.
so the Wednesday, the 19th, the planning commission recommends to the board that they set a public hearing. That next day, they could call a meeting. You don't have to wait until the next Tuesday, which
Right,
is
concurrently,
Christmas.
Let's try that.
Yeah.
So
At
then,
least give some fluidity to it and still keep with the process.
So would you like to see a milestone at this point? Just lay it out and just have an understanding of what the milestone is. So perhaps we don't lose sight of the milestone. And that's is that what you're requesting, Commissioner?
Sure. Something.
Okay.
Something to grab onto.
Do the
Just-
timeline out so you
just-
can see.
And hold to that. I'll go with a public hearing. I'll even negotiate and bargain on, not just me, there's other two here, of moving it forward, but at least get me a public hearing out of this of some sort. That's what I've been waiting for 4 years.
And that's fair.
Me personally.
So
That's me personally.
For the board.
Let's work
But
on.
for the board as a whole.
Let's work on the timeline based
Is that
on
all right?
on the December 19th recommendations. by
I'll
the
give a little
Planning
bit to get
Commission
somewhere.
And just lay it out that.
Is that all right?
The
Yeah, I
planning
just don't wanna get it
commission makes a
wrong.
Yeah,
So
no.
we end up getting kicked
So
all
I
the
do
way
want
back.
to interject, from what I heard, December 19th would be the earliest that the planning commission
But the 14th is a
might
problem.
make a recommendation, because they may not be ready to make a recommendation by the 19th, is that?
that's a planning commission decision.
So that's, don't commit to, it's difficult to make a
Well, let's
commitment
ask.
when that's the.
Well, that's what
moving target.
that was our
Decision
suggestion.
of the planning commission.
There was a suggestion to have a conversation with the planning commission. The expectation is the planning commission to provide recommendations by December 19th.
This is life. Let's try that.
Okay.
And this is the most solid piece of any of this in 4 years.
Right
So,
on.
I mean, I'm just trying to put something on the wall to make it stick, figuratively
Understood.
speaking.
And staff is working hard to make sure that it does that
Oh,
same thing.
I got it. We all got about a gazillion things at one time to do. So.
Okay, Brad's gonna get to work on the red line comments now.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Very complicated, you guys.
I know. We have 6 minutes.
We always have a lot of extra time left, huh? Okay.
Oops.
Advisory boards and commission. We got to at least approve one today.
Let me bring La Bonita to you.
You have a commissioner's item?
Yep.
No, I don't have
I
to.
got
It's
lots
just,
of
No.
items.
well, yeah, but, I mean, when are we gonna get to them? We ain't gonna
You
get
got
to 'em
30
today.
seconds to do that.
So. Let's see, boards and commissions.
Ooh, perfect touch. That was perfect.
Okay. We're still waiting for your decision.
Thank you. I forget my bold voice. The Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board is we have 2 applications that have been submitted. Did you have time to look at Clayton Hill and/or Jeff?
My assignment was not, mine was Robert Barnes.
Okay.
Don't
And I
look
have
at
some
me.
information about Robert Barnes.
Okay.
But first Clayton Hill and Storm.
I don't want to be forced into these, and this, what we're dealing with right now is a good example of why.
Okay.
So,
Oh, okay.
Go to Robert Barnes.
Okay, Robert Barnes was on vacation, and that's why he wasn't responding. He's back. But I still haven't received an updated application.
Okay.
Was that was an extended vacation?
Okay, so
Like
let's
sometime
just
like a
not do
snowbird
anything
type
on
thing,
any
or
of
is
this.
it-
No, just.
Not that long?
No.
I say,
Okay.
well, we just can't do anything on it then, unless you guys have talked to Clayton and Jeff.
No.
I haven't. But if you want to give me an assignment, I guess I could. I would. It's got to be on my
Assign you.
assignment.
It's not my job to do that, but, okay.
Well, somebody's got to talk to them.
The other issue that you brought up last week was the planning commission, and you thought there were vacancies, 3 vacancies?
Coming up? No?
No, they're not. Some members' terms will be coming up at the end of December.
Will they be renewing?
Yes.
Well,
So they
no,
haven't
no,
put in.
that's up to us if we.
Right, I
Right.
know that, but if they're not gonna renew at all, then you need to go start looking now.
I've
If they're
been
gonna
looking.
renew,
I have been looking.
okay.
Okay.
Then we need to then start applying so we can start
Okay.
getting ahead of that game, because we do not want that one to fall behind.
And the
I'm on it.
agritourism only has 1 vacancy. I verified that.
And we don't have a application for that?
No,
one
I do
yet?
not.
Okay, good enough.
That's all I have.
You say,
Ta-da.
Robert Barnes, he's been instructed to update an app?
Yes, he was.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, that helps a little bit.
Okay, that's all for
What's
me.
been going on?
We're done, unless they have anything? Nope. You have anything, Robin? PIO for 30 seconds.
Check the batteries in that thing.
Yes. So I'll make this quick. On social media, we have 3,966 likes on Facebook. So we're approaching the 4,000 mark. I hope to hit the 4,000 mark by middle of this month. We're 4,879 followers on Twitter, 960 on Instagram, and 94 on YouTube. The pretrial services and human resources promotional videos are scheduled to go out this month. I'm also working with Public Health and Social Services on the production of their video. That'll probably go out in November, though. This and just a reminder: this is part of our County Up Close, or Your County Up Close campaign on social media. We are moving forward with the production of a human resources recruitment video this month. Production will begin middle of October, with an anticipated release date of January 2018. And the fall edition of the County Up Close newsletter is scheduled for release this month, so I'll be putting that together. We're looking at a release date of October 18th. This will be published on our county news page and sent out to our subscribers list, which currently has 114 subscribers. And yeah, that's all I have for this right now.
No, nothing. Thank you.
Good.
You're the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, anything else? No, that's the conclusion of the work session program.